So this week's Parsha Shmini, deals with many subjects, including the laws of purity and impurity. And I want to examine a couple of laws and explain them in the light of Chassidus as the Rebbe explains them. By first stating the obvious, that the laws of impurity and purity on the surface level, like what's the relevance and what does it mean, and what's the message, especially nowadays, most of the laws do not apply because we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. The laws of impurity basically are there certain things that render a person ritually impure to various degrees. The most severe defiling or tomei agent is the dead body of a Jew, a corpse. Even being under the same roof would render one impure, and that takes 7 days to go through the process. Most other forms of impurity require immersion in a mikveh and waiting till nightfall. What causes impurity? So the Torah says what it causes impurity is the carcass of the following: the carcass of a non-kosher animal, the carcass of a kosher animal that was not shechted, or even a piece of it, and then the carcass of 8 specific crawling creatures, Shmini shrotzim. We're not exactly sure exactly what they are. There's different opinions. One of them is a snail, for example. So a carcass of these agencies, if a person touches it or carries it or moves it, becomes ritually impure. Could even affect his clothing if he carries it. If he touches it, only affects him. And what happens if you're ritually impure? You're impure? Is what? 2 things, 2 limitations. You cannot enter the Beis Hamikdash, the holy temple, like this, and you cannot partake of the meat of a holy food. If it's a sacrifice, or if you're a kohen, the truma, that's the food, the grain, the produce that the Jewish farmer would give a kohen, that he must eat it in a state of purity. So in summary, the ramifications of this, again, don't apply today, because it's either entering the Beis Hamikdash, we do not, or partaking of sanctified food, which you don't either. And the whole book of Vayikra is devoted, the huge chunks, entire parshas, I'm just going to close the door of it, are devoted to these laws. Oh, Mikey, good to see you. Are devoted to these laws. So we're going to explain a little bit the significance of these laws in the light of Chassidus, and we'll see. As the pasuk says, there's a pasuk says that goes like this. Pasuk in Veschanan. Pasuk in Veschanan, Moishe Rabbeinu says that Hashem has commanded us to do. Hashem has commanded us to observe all these laws to fear God, which means all of the laws induce a fear of God. Fear doesn't mean quaking in your boots; it means in your boots. Or respect. Every halacha spiritually has its application to all people at all times. And that's what Chassidus reveals. What's the message to us? So let's begin a little bit. So maybe we'll talk about, first of all, the klicheres. The Torah distinguishes between, not only a person can become ritually impure, vessels can become impure, food can become impure, clothing can become impure when these defiling agencies touch them. What's interesting is the law about the klicheres, the earthenware vessel. Vessels not made of earthenware become impure when touched on the outside of it. This, by the way, is earthenware, probably. Or the inside, either one. But it has to touch. It's to touch the body of it, the outside or the inside. Now, the earthenware klicheres is a unique law. It's impervious to tum on the outside. It only becomes impure if the piece of this carcass, whatever it may be, mentioned earlier, falls inside the airspace of the vessel, and then it contaminates the vessel and everything in it, even if it doesn't touch the vessel, just entering the airspace. Other vessels have to be touched by the tomei. Let's call it the tomei. But the klicheres On the one hand, here's the thing. On one hand, it's like it's less prone to becoming tummy because if it's touched on the outside, not affected. On the other hand, it's more prone to become tummy, interestingly, paradoxically, because if it enters its inner airspace, it and whatever's in there becomes tummy. With the other vessels, there's got to be actual contact. So what's the lesson here in Avodas Hashem? What's the message? The episode like this. Earthenware is made from earth. A person remembers that, as we say in the Rosh Hashanah Kippur davening, Adam Yesoidei la'afar, a person's foundation, we come from earth. V'soifei la'afar, and the end, he goes back to earth. Mosh kecheres hanishbar, like a broken earthenware vessel. That's where he ends. If a person lives a life with this humility and this awareness, then he is impervious to tumah touching him on the outside. What's the outside? What's the outside of a Jew? What's the external dimension of the Jew? There's the inner dimension, the inner space, and the external. His inner space is his Yiddishkeit, his learning, his davening, his mitzvahs, his spirituality, his holiness. What's the external part of the Jew, where he's interacting the world outside of him? This is his physical engagements, business, etc. If you like, the physical component of his life, that's his external part. So such a Jew, it's always going to remember that he's a klicheres. He's not going to be contaminated by his contact with the world. His physical engagements will all be the way they should be, a means for an end to serve Hashem. Whereas someone who's not metaphorically a earthenware vessel, what is he? He's metal or he's glass, which are what? He says, wood or metal. So wood, it's growing, is expanding, he's not humble like earth, but he's expanding. Or metal, he's hard and brittle. So this is the opposite of humility. The earthenware vessel represents earth, humility. If he's symbolically a wooden vessel or a metal vessel, glass falls under the category really of sand, earth. It's pure glass. So such a person can be, because he, quite simply, his ego, I want. He's susceptible to becoming tumah and getting caught up and transgressing, even in his engagements with the world out there, not for a means for an end. Physical pursuit of money, physical pleasure can contaminate him. Why? Because he doesn't have that humility that I'm just here to serve. But he's self-assertive. He's growing and expanding. He's his own agenda. He's tough. What I want, the opposite of the humility of the klicheres. So summary, who is ego-driven, so such a person you want, so obviously, it's very likely that he's going to become contaminated even in those things which should be a means for an end. They start to become an end in of themselves. Money, pleasure, etc. Clear? Here comes the paradox. But when it comes inside, when the impurity enters the inner space, so if it's the lower level, if he's wood or if he's metal, it doesn't come impure unless it actually touches him. Just entering the inner space, not. But the earthenware vessel, if it enters the inner space, it becomes impure. So simple at first level explanation is, because the earthenware vessel is a higher level, he's humble, his internal avodah is held to a higher standard. So let's put it this way. This guy is davening, the earthenware vessel guy is davening. And we're all human. A thought enters in his mind. It enters. He's not going to entertain it and indulge in it. He's not acting upon it. It's just a thought. He's already becomes, for such a person, holding at the level of such humility, he's held to a higher standard, and he needs to do teshuvah there, makes him impure. Someone started holding at this level, it just entered into his space, but I didn't do anything about it. I noticed, I saw it, I gave it a fleeting thought. It doesn't become ritually impure because he's not holding at that level. Only if he actually engages the impurity internally does it become impure. That's one level. But that actually says something else. At the end of the day, we have to have a bit of both. Because if he's only humble, and he's the earthenware vessel, his engagement with the world is very marginal. He's not doesn't get contaminated by it. He's in the world of spirituality books. That's where he is all the time. Such a person we see, then when the temptation really gets inside, he enters in his inner space, he doesn't, because he's meek and humble, and that's all he is, he doesn't necessarily find the strength to resist it. He falls easily prey. But if someone is a tough guy, he's a tough guy out there too. In this material thing, there's an ego. And the ego can work in his favor. He gets the temptation, he has the strength to reject it. I'm not going to go there. That's the downside of someone who's only bittul, and it's a problem. When you're only bittul, you're Mr. Innocent and you're holy, and then comes a big taiva you weren't looking for, but it just enters into your airspace. The person can very easily lose himself because he's not exercised, what's I'm looking for, the right way. He hasn't exercised his own his own ego, his own ability to be tough and strong. So here's the upshot of the guy in the lower level. He might sometimes find it, tempted, but no, thank you. Whereas the innocent yeshiva bacher, like the klicheres, he's humble. You got to be careful when temptations enter his inner world, then he becomes even more susceptible. So as long as he's living in that, maintaining that very high level of holiness and transcendence, he's good. But if it gets into if it enters his world uninvited, he could lose himself there. Whereas the guy who is out in the world anyway, and he sees it out there and so on, another taiva, goodbye, he's have time for it. He's got to make a buck. There's a certain mila in that being brittle a little bit. That's what I'm looking for, brittle and being tough, like the tree. He's to grow, got to make money, don't have time. Or he's the vessel, he's the iron vessel, it's a tough guy. That guy can resist sin sometimes more than the one who's humble. So we have to realize each one has a mila over the other. Each one has a virtue. Okay, so that was one insight into these laws of earthenware and its practical message for us. Now we're going to look at another series of laws. There are three conditions, friends. Three conditions whereby food, let's talk about grain specifically, any growing thing can become tome. Number one, it has to be the kind of food that is fit for human consumption, not animal food. Michael Adam. If it's animal food, it's not susceptible to becoming impure. Clear? Second law is it has to have been made wet. It has to be made water, actually seven liquids, one of 7 liquids, if you remember. Water, blood, dew, milk, honey, oil, wine. One of these 7 liquids has to have fallen on the grain at some point to make it susceptible to contracting tum impurity. And thirdly, it has to be severed from the ground. If there's even one root left, and that root is enough to keep the grain alive, then all the impurity in the world could fall on it, and it's impervious, it doesn't become impure. So these are the 3 conditions. Now I'm going to explain them spiritually. Condition number 1, for a growing foodstuff that comes from the ground to contract ritual impurity, A, it's got to be human consumption, uniquely. B, it has to have been wetted at some point before the defiling object touched it, that carcass, the piece of carcass. And 3, it has to be severed. What's the message? First message is like this. An amazing thing. God created impurity. Hashem created impurity in the world. But the way Hashem created impurity is that it has a very limited life force. God created it enough for us to tempt us to be there and not more. Now, because it has very little life force, it's like when you have an enemy sitting in your jail, and you need him to be in your jail. You need him for whatever to serve the state. So what do you give him to live? Enough to keep him going, and that's it. You don't indulge the guy because you just to keep him alive and you want him healthy, but nothing more than that. Moreover, as it says in Chassidus, metaphorically, when the jailer would feed him or the king would feed him, he wouldn't face to face. Just drop it in and goodbye. Open up the cell, put it in. Why? Because I don't really want you for you. You're just a means for an end. So you get the food, but there's no real personal interaction. What this means spiritually as a God keeps impurity alive in the world because it's part of his purpose to test us and to overcome it and to tshuva and all of the whole point of free will. And therefore is the caveat. All impure forces, they're all seeking, they're all hungry to get more life. And where are they going to get it? Holiness. Holiness, holy things, that's where God is revealed. That's where there's a great energy. So if they can corrupt holiness, if they can get into our world of holiness, that's where they really gorge, and that's where they really become a true menace and a really powerful force. That's why the halacha is, important halacha, friends. Before you touch food in the morning, for that matter, any part of your body which is open, mouth, you have to wash naglavas. Because you wake up in the morning, one is ritually impure to a small degree. The soul comes back to the body, but it doesn't come back all the way to the fingertips. You have to wash the fingertips to purify the hand, netilat yadayim, to allow your soul full entry. And any food that touched becomes ritually impure. There's no ramifications nowadays, practical, but the fact is, it's effective. A non-Jew can touch the food. A non-Jew can touch food. Why? Because he doesn't have the neshama, the godly soul. So the forces of impurity aren't seeking to latch themselves on there like parasites and get nourished there because the holiness isn't so great there. Whereas a Yid has a neshama, a Jew is a Jew, he has this holy soul. So he doesn't mean like always looking at every corner is how can we get in there and feed off this guy's soul? By how basically do that when our mitzvahs are corrupted or not even just mitzvahs. If we don't do what's right, and where a Jew is holy, if a Jew is a holy Jew, then that feeds the forces of evil much more than a non-Jew who doesn't do what's right. Because the holiness is greater here. We're clear? So this is the first condition, that in order for food to become what? Ritually impure, it's got to be fitting for human consumption. Michael Adam, and he's an explanation here about Adam. Adam is a term, it means man generally, but it's a term that only applies to the Jew. Atem kurim Adam, the word, why? Because the word Adam comes from the word Adama le'elyon, similar Adama, similar to the one above, because our neshama is rooted in Hashem. So where is Tumah gonna seek? Only food that's fit for an Adam, which means it's going to seek and it's always lurking and trying to find and to latch itself on to that which is Jewish and it's connected to holiness. To take it even a metaphor further, Hashem calls sacrifices my food, lachmi, my bread, my food. So any mitzvah we're doing is an offering to God. Every mitzvah is a korban to Hashem. And it's his nourishment, as it were. It's that which is Michael Adam, food for the supernal man, Hashem, reflected in us and our neshama. That's where evil seeks to find an opening, a corruption, an agenda that we can latch onto and gorge ourselves. Arrogance, pride, or you're doing the mitzvah and you're hurting someone in the process, which is the next point. The next condition is that the food has to be made wet. What's the idea of water? Water causes, the Gemara is like this, a person eats without Drinking, it's like he ate blood. It's poisonous for the body. You need water to bring the food to all limbs of the body. Water causes things to spread. The nature of water is it spreads. Water causes things to stick together. So what's this? A Jew is holding by the level, listen, there's influence on others. He's water, he's like in Yiddish lachluchis. There's moisture to him, people are attracted to him, and he has influence on others and he affects others. Here's where the forces of impurity say this is tremendous energy, and we really want to get here as well. We can somehow, he's in a position of authority, he's affecting others. First of all, it means we can get him like to hurt people in the process. That's a big win for the forces of impurity. With his water, where he's not just living in his own world, but he's spreading, he's affecting, he's a person of influence, the people that look at him, he's influenced the world outside of him. He's more susceptible, what's another condition, for impurity because he's exhibiting greater holiness. Not just he's a holy Jew himself, he's got this water thing. People stick to him and he's spreading it. Got to be very careful there. So now a person could think to himself, then why do I even need this whole thing? So the holier I am, the more I'm affecting others, you're telling me the more I'm susceptible to become impure. Who needs this? Therefore comes the third condition. The third condition is if you're even one root plugged into your source, you can never become impure. That's the third condition. It's got to be severed. Going to be severed. As long as this back to our first discussion, that this element of everything I have is a gift from Hashem. As long as there's even one thread of that awareness, and he means that sincerely, don't worry. You're not going to be a cause of impurity. Your kedusha will remain for you, and your influence on others will also be untarnished. As long as you recognize that you're not coming in a vacuum. Who you are is thanks to Hashem. You got parents, there's grandparents. You don't come in a vacuum. There's schus avos. You have a Rabbi. It's all one package. So if I'm on my own, severed, he's a holy Jew and he's influencing others. Doors are open everywhere for all of this to actually cause damage, impurity. But if it's going to have even that little connection, but it's sincere, what do I stress? What I'm really referring to, I'll conclude with this. Hashem said like this. The Pasuk says in Shir Hashirim, God is saying, open up for me. I want to be part of your life. Open up for me. So our sages say, if a Jew opens even like the opening of a needle, it's a tiny opening for Hashem. It's enough. Hashem will open up his heart like the opening of the entrance to the Heichal, which is 20 cubits high, massive opening. Everyone said, what's it mean, opening of a needle? It's a small thing, but it's through and through. The needle pierces. That's the point of a needle. So he's not the greatest, was not far from perfect, but he has this point. He really knows and sincerely that, and it penetrates through all of the illusions and delusions, that whatever I have is a gift, and he's connected to that and maintains it. Don't worry. That all the tumas in the world, though they will not affect you because you're plugged in. So here we have the laws of impurity and its message. The three conditions. 1, it's got to be fitting for human consumption. 2, it's got to be wet. That means that's where impurity seeks to. Here's a big catch if we can get this guy holy and he's affecting others. Got to be careful. Solution: remain plugged in. Don't take credit. Maintain that essence of humility. You'll be successful. All right, friends, you got it? A wonderful Shabbos.